Well, Kara, I'm so excited that you are here. Very, very excited selfishly that you are here. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jess. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yeah. So, I definitely want to take everybody back to some of your story before we get into what you do today. Because what you do today is there's no other word for it, fun. Like, it's just so fun. It's so liberating. Going and following your social media page is such a breath of fresh air. But what I'm really excited about, honestly, is that you had reached out to be on the podcast because what the audience might not know is that you came through Empower in 2022. So to have you here 2 years later after watching your business just explode and all the cool things that you're doing and working in different corporations and working with different groups of people, it's really special for me and a full circle moment for me to see what was once kind of like this crazy, stupid idea, as we call it, has turned into this entire company. So I just want to edify you and just tell you I'm really proud of you and I'm really grateful for you reaching out.
Thank you. That means
Yeah.
so much to me. And yeah, it's so nice to connect 2 years later and just like so much has happened. And for maybe all the people in Empower now or thinking about Empower now, I think it'll give them a lot of insight as well as to what can happen for them.
Yeah, I have goosebumps because I know what you've done and I know the hard work you've put into it as well and some of the bumps you've been through. I'd love if you take us back to obviously you had worked in corporate, you what like 10 years in corporate, such a typical PR type of position, hustle, grind, bustle, all the things. Take us back to the moment you decide to leave corporate to go build something completely like 180 difference.
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say the journey kind of started November 2019. And I was going through this dark night of the soul. So I was really miserable in this PR career. I was really burnt out. And then I was given this promotion to vice president of a company, which was like really big for especially my age at that time. But I had this really feeling that it was off. Like it felt really icky to me. And even though I was going to be making more money, yeah, it just felt really like gross. I don't know a better word for it. It just felt really off. And they had asked me literally to marry the job. I was expected to be on call all the time. And so I had this moment where I actually declined that job. And it was for the first time, I just felt so proud of myself for really advocating for myself, speaking my truth, saying no to more money if it was not aligned, knowing I could do that in another capacity. And, there were definitely people in my life who were unhappy with that decision. They thought it was such this promotion and like such an achievement and what you should want. But my whole life, I had been doing what people wanted me to do and not what I wanted to do. But then at that same time, so I declined that, which was really positive for me, at least in my self-worth. But then I also had a lot of health issues going on with epilepsy that I really wasn't speaking about because I had a lot of shame and didn't know how people would take that. I also had a serious relationship end that I thought was going to be my person. And just overall, also, I had a cockroach infestation. For anyone who's gone through
Oh,
that, it is so anxiety inducing and just the worst seeing them all the time.
oh God,
Especially, I'm a
no.
really clean person. So I really felt like it was just like mirroring what was happening in my
Yeah.
life, spiritually at least. And so all this stuff was happening. And then I got to, also, I had been worth mentioning, I had been doing therapy for a long time, inner child healing, but it was always really heavy. So life was just feeling really heavy and dark. And then March 2020 came and I was in my role still. I declined that position, but I stayed in my old role. And then I lost my job really as soon as COVID started because marketing was the first thing to go. And, I was getting all these messages, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But like, I had never felt more at peace than in that moment
Isn't that
because
crazy?
I just felt like so connected to my soul. And like, finally, you have this chance to do something you love to do, which was really exciting. And at that moment, I didn't yet have clarity, but all I knew was that I need to lighten up my life. Things are so heavy and so dark. And so I had a therapist recommend to me, play more. You can heal with play. And I really loved that idea, but I started looking, okay, how do adults play? And I just couldn't find any resources. And I found all these resources for kids. I found books about the science behind play, and I read those. And that was really exciting since we learned that play is so fluffy or immature or just for kids or we need to grow up. So I was understanding that play is actually really important for us, but I just didn't know how to play. And so this was totally just a spiritual journey on my own. Even at this point in March, like I never thought I would be a business owner. And so I just started playing every day myself and really connecting to my inner child. And I felt like because I had that space, I was coming up with these creative ideas. And then,
What were some of the things you were doing to play at that time? Like, what were you actually
yeah.
doing?
Yeah. And so for me, my big thing uncovered in therapy was like, I was such a perfectionist, people pleaser. Like all of my play in the past had to do with achievement.
Yep.
So I was like a competitive dancer. I didn't do art because I thought I was bad at it. Like I would only do things I thought I was quote unquote good at. And so I didn't know how to just be messy and have fun and not worry about the outcome. And what I was learning was play was actually not about an outcome, at least the true spirit of play. It was about like letting go of this need for control, being in the present moment, being curious and spontaneous, and just letting yourself be free, not needing to prove yourself or your worth. And so I very quickly realized I wasn't doing that. So I needed to let go of the perfectionism. So the first idea I had come to me was, okay, I want to revisit art. I haven't done art since elementary school because I had this idea that I can't draw on the lines, and just even like one message like that from a teacher can often impact you for your whole life in your subconscious mind. And so I decided I'm going to revisit art, but I'm going to do it with a blindfold. So I'm going to put on a blindfold and
Ooh.
cover my eyes so that I can't judge my art. That inner critic that I'm so used to that judges everything I'm doing or shames me for not being good enough at it, it's going to be silenced. And so of course it's not going to look good. It's not meant to look good. It's meant to be fun. And so I did that. And like, it was a bit hard at first, but like, it was also really freeing to just be like, hey, like, you're safe to express yourself right now in this moment. It doesn't need to look a certain way. And so I did that. That was really healing for me. Another one was doing sillier dance because I had been doing more like serious dance. Like
Yeah.
it had to like 1, 2, 3, like hit these moves this way.
Yeah.
Whereas like just being like silly and like dancing like an animal or like an octopus or just like really connecting with my inner child, things I never thought I would do. There's just this feeling of freedom and it was really powerful and beautiful. So the more I did that, the more I just felt so wildly creative and really like I noticed such big health shifts actually within my own health.
Wow.
I was feeling happier and healthier. My relationships were changing. So I was just like noticing that like, oh, okay, everything they say about the science of play is actually true. And I need to bring this to the world. And I had this business idea to become a play coach. And as excited as I was personally, I was like terrified to tell people in my life because it was kind of out there. I didn't know anyone else doing it. And that was when I realized, like, oh, okay, my mindset needs a lot of work right now. And then that year, I got certified in hypnotherapy and NLP so that I felt more confident to bring that to the world. And yeah, so then I officially launched in November 2020. It was a really rocky year. Like, it was a really exciting year because I was finally doing something I love, but there was a lot of disapproval amongst my family, amongst friends.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but like significant people in my life thought I was totally out of my mind. Like you said, like crazy, stupid ideas, totally what they thought this was.
Yeah.
And I just had this really strong calling that, like, no, this is going to work. This is going to happen no matter what people say. Like, I need to do this for me. And just like really leaned into that self trust. And so, yeah, I officially launched in November 2020, and it's been a wild ride since then.
Insane. What would you
Mhm.
say to someone listening who is experiencing or fears experiencing people that are important to them not really being on board? Like, how did you navigate that? Did those relationships rekindle now? Like, here we are 4 years later. What has that looked like? And do you have any tools for someone who's going through that? Because I know for a lot of people listening, that's a huge thing that holds them back. It's like, what are these people going to disapprove of? What are they going to think of? That type of stuff.
Yeah, I would say first of all, your pain is valid. It's going to bring up a lot of pain and like allow yourself to feel that and don't dismiss it. I think so often we tell we shut ourselves away or just like bypass emotion. So I think like allow yourself to feel that. That is a really hard thing, and it is something you go through that will help you make you stronger. The one thing I started doing though was like stopped sharing my ideas with people who weren't supportive. Like I
Mhm.
was constantly trying to like get opinions from people who like weren't my ideal client or like it really just wasn't helpful. So it's like, okay, I'm going to be really careful with who I share this to, at least to start, so that I could stay really lit up and like investing in coaching. Like I started investing in coaching that year and getting in groups of people like in Empower who like really support you and who love you. And I think that is like such a big one. Getting around people, like who you surround yourself with, your environment is so important for your mindset. So if
Yeah.
you're constantly around people who are complaining or saying that's not going to be possible, it's going to be really hard for you to kind of keep going. So coaching honestly was a really big one for me as well. And then, yeah, of course, like just being really careful with who I was sharing that with, but allowing yourself to feel that pain. And then for me, it was like inner child work,
Yeah.
thinking back to little Kara who had that, had emotional abandonment as a kid, who had that fear of abandonment being brought up right in that moment. It was like a calling for me to heal and remind myself that I was worthy no matter what other people were saying, and that it was safe to trust myself. So it was really just this calling for me to, yeah, in self-trust. So I would say to anyone going through that, trust yourself. If you have that idea, it is so possible for you, and know there are people out there who need you. Like if you have that idea, it is meant for you. And then just, yeah, get some like invest in coaching or just a group of people to support you as you do it.
Yeah. Just really filtering who you're around and who is influencing the decisions and actions that you're, making along the way is huge. When you talk about inner child work, so I've been doing this myself for a while. We've talked about it on the podcast here and there. I'm so curious because I feel like it's one of those things that gets tossed around. It's very trendy. It's kind of like people talking about shadow work, inner child work, even the work, right? Nicola Perola wrote the book, like how to do the work, because people say like, are you doing the work? And it's like, how do I do it? Like, what's the 1, 2, 3 step for that? So when you say inner child work, is this something that you experience with clients that it's like a one and done where you're like, oh, self-abandonment was a thing. I journal on it once and it's healed? Or is this something that generally kind of comes back up for people and might take multiple times looking at it through the microscope?
Oh yeah. Inner child work is definitely ongoing. It's a deep journey. I still do it. Honestly, it's like reconnecting with little me. Like even right now, I have this picture
Oh,
of my
look at
little
you.
self
So cute.
that I tap into throughout the day. But yeah, for anyone that might not know, essentially our inner child is the subconscious part of our brain that is innocent or childlike, and essentially 95% of what we're doing every day is actually driven by our inner child, by past experiences, past trauma, little or big. And so it's funny, I always say, like, especially if you don't have a team and you're a business owner, you're actually not the sole CEO. Like, your inner child is the co-CEO with you. They are driving everything you're doing. So, like, all those fears from childhood are, and, past experiences that we haven't dealt with are really impacting our business. And so, yeah, my program goes really deep into inner child work. I've done a lot of that as well, because I think business owners really need to be conscious of their subconscious beliefs, and because it really does impact our business. So it's something we can do ongoing. I think it gets easier with time. But yeah, it's so funny. And Nicola Pear, I've gone into her group as well. And it was even in funny, that was one thing that motivated me in in somewhere in 2020. I remember, and this is like crazy stupid idea again. I was in her self-healer circle and I was watching this presentation someone did, and I just had this soul nudge that, like, that's going to be you in a year. And it's like I hadn't even launched my business yet. Like, I was the smallest fish ever. And like, again, people thought I was just out of my mind, but I had this soul calling. And like, for me, it was tapping into my inner child, this girl who used to have really big dreams, who like really wanted to impact the world, who really believed in herself, but then who dimmed herself down to try to fit in and belong and not be too much, because I was scared of being abandoned or rejected. So it was like, for me, my business was a way of showing up for that little girl that I had abandoned for
Yeah.
so long, and
Yeah.
tapping into her. And so even every day, it's like, I'm not just doing this for me, I'm doing it for little me as well. And, of course, all the other people I get to impact. But then within a year, I did actually get invited to be in her self-healer circle. So it was just like, it was so wild. What
Amazing.
happens when you do really trust yourself?
Yeah. I feel like there's two sides to this coin. So there's the one side where we're listening to you right now, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, little self, like hungry for more. I got this, big dreams, like all these things. And then the other side of that coin is like, yeah, but it's kind of the eye roll, like, really? Like, you want me to play? Like, you don't get it. Life is so
Mhm.
serious. I have a mortgage. I have kids. Like, I don't have time for this. I'm so curious how you navigate. I'm assuming that this comes up as like an objection for people, even to your content. I would think that people are even, there's a resistance. I love your content. Kara's content, You have to go follow her on Instagram. Like, I'm going to shout you out right now. When you put reels up, when you're playing actor, actress with your perfectionism self, like, and you go back and forth, they're my favorite. It's so spot on. Or like what society thinks. And then you play the role of society versus like the role of Kara. But I feel like your content in general and the idea of play can be
Mhm.
extremely triggering for people. And when it's triggering, we kind of like shut it off. And so the other side of this coin is this like, you don't get it. Like I'm an adult. I have things to do. How do you sort of navigate, even if that's like an internal gremlin conversation that someone's having, how do you navigate that objection?
Yeah, I think in a few ways. I think one way is like the science of play, especially I play with organizations. So I'll go into work with like engineers or like tech people, and it's like, oh my gosh, like this might feel like the audience who's going to be so not receptive to this. But one of the things I say to them is I talk about Albert Einstein, and that's someone that a lot of people admire. He was arguably one of the greatest thinkers of all time, and he was the biggest play advocate. And he really had that playful mindset. If you look at pictures of him, his like tongue is sticking out. Like he was just so playful, always trying new things and inventing. And like, did he fail a lot? Like technically, yes. For me, it's not really failure. It's just like learning opportunities. But he also succeeded so much because he was constantly playing with the playful mindset, but also just like being playful and making jokes and doing things. So I know for me, at least with my corporate audience, that really helps people when they just
Yeah.
start to understand that, oh, really successful people do prioritize play, like the ones who are like happy and really thriving. And that I think that really helps. I think also like a lot of people will realize that, at least I did, when you have resistance to something, often it means it's meant for you.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, I had a lot of resistance to play. Like even a few years ago, like before I started my business, I was in this international, intergenerational dance group, and it was aged 9 to 93.
Wow.
And for the warm up, they had asked us to, we were in this big gymnasium, and they had asked us to just like, they wanted us to like loosen up and just like get in our bodies. So they're like, okay, everyone, for the next minute, we're going to play a song, and I want you to gallop around this gymnasium like a horse. And I was like, oh my gosh, absolutely not. This is like so cringe. I don't want to do this at all. This is
Yeah.
so weird. Like that was my reaction to it. And then I saw these women who were like 60s, 70s, 80s, one in her 90s. They just like linked arms and they started galloping, and they were just laughing, and they were so free. And like I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want. Like it wasn't dancing like a horse, but it was like the freedom,
Yeah.
the laughter, like they were so uninhibited. They didn't care what people thought of them. Whereas like I felt like I was in this thought prison worrying so much what people thought of me. And so but then I realized that, oh, like I do have a lot of resistance to that, and that means something. So I think for us, it's like we can get curious about the resistance there and like study the science behind it. But I think at some point too, people just get fed up with the perfectionism. They get fed up with their inner critic. They realize that, yeah, they are taking things really serious, so they're feeling really rigid with life.
Yeah.
Another thing I talk about too is, the top regrets of the dying. And two of those top regrets are actually around play. Like one is that they wish they let themselves laugh more and be uninhibited, and they let them just be their silly self without worrying what so many people thought of them. And then another one is about like authenticity and just being true to themselves and not following the shoulds. And like those relate so much for me for play, that like, wow, like what people really want is like authentic self-expression, laughter, joy, which is what play really, really brings to me. But of course, everyone's on their own journey. And yeah, some people will see it and they'll just be like, absolutely not. But maybe those people will be ready in a few years. And if they're not, that's okay. It can't be for everyone. But
Yeah.
I truly do believe that play is for everyone and that we all can reconnect with it. But a lot of us have been shamed out of it or have trauma that makes it hard to play at first.
Yeah. Or we just don't prioritize it. Because when you're looking at your to-do list and all the things, it's like, well, that can't possibly be more important than the laundry, or the fill in the
Totally.
blank. Yeah. So you said something before that really resonated. I actually did a whole podcast episode on this a while back. I personally would never play something that I couldn't win. And so I've definitely dealt with that. And I think a lot of people in our community have as well. And it's that sort of like lingering on perfectionism and whatever you would want to call it, control, right? I've always had kind of control issues, challenges with control. So for me, like if I couldn't play, if I couldn't win, I wouldn't play. And that was like very simple. So I let myself out of a lot of joyful experiences. I think back to college, and this is the one I use all the time. It's so stupid. It was a drinking game, but I never learned how to play. Like, I don't know if I just like was absent that day at college, but like I never learned the game. I never learned the rules. And so for 4 years of college, anytime people would play, I had this story that I thought the game was stupid. And I was like, that's such a stupid game. I'm not going to play that game. That's so lame. Instead of just saying, like, hey, can someone teach me? I never learned. And I would sit out and I would sit out of this game, which, yes, it's a drinking game, but like people are laughing and they're having fun and they're making memories and everyone's talking about it. And there's this a community being built around this stupid game. And I never learned it, but I wasn't in a position where I was even confident enough or could remove my ego to ask for help. And so
Yeah.
I have struggled personally with perfectionism my entire life. And I've done a lot of healing in the last, decade. Now I'm 40. But when you said earlier, you blindfolded yourself to paint,
Yeah.
the hair on the back of my neck stood up because I'm like, okay, I have work I get to do. The
Yeah.
thought of, and for me, my mom is a professional artist. Art was always my thorn in my
Mm.
side. I'm very, very artistic, but like compared to her, I'm not, in my head. I feel like there are things that you have people do because I've seen you work with Play-Doh and paint and bubbles, and I'm such a rule follower. And with dance, like give me choreographed dance. I can't just freestyle. That's crazy. I'm
Yeah.
so curious how you teach perfectionism.
Mhm.
Talk to me just about perfectionism because it's such a huge part of what you do.
Yeah, definitely. And that is why people usually come work with me. Like I do specialize in working with perfectionists. So for me, I like to explain that play is the opposite of perfectionism. And so with perfectionism, as you know, and like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching this because this is me too. Like we think so rigidly. It's either one way or another, black and white. We're so much overthinking, we second guess ourselves. And like this really impacts us as business owners as well. Like I truly think perfectionism costs us like thousands and thousands of dollars by staying stuck. What I really experienced was like feeling like our work is just never good enough. Like, even if we do like a good enough job, there's like still that voice being like, could have done better. And it's like you can just never feel satisfied and it's so exhausting. Yeah, you just have these impossible standards on yourself. Also, there's a lot of procrastinating so that you feel like, okay, I can avoid any discomfort or potential failure. And like one day I'll feel ready. And then there's just like all this pressure on yourself, right? That you've talked about, like I've felt as well in dance and taking our creations very seriously. And so for me, when I first started with play, it was very much more about the activities and like experiencing the freedom that those activities brought. And I still do those things and it's really healing for me. But then I realized that like play is also a mindset that I can bring to my business. So when I invite in play or I invite in fun to my business, I can do it with tasks. Like I can let go of the rigid thinking. I can be open to trying new things. I can take a few more risks. Like there's still, it's not like I'm like, just like, woo, I don't care at
Yeah.
all. Like I still have strategy and like, I still actually really care, but I'm
Yeah.
like open to playing with things and
Yeah. And you
knowing
do
like,
it with an avocado background.
yeah, of course. Um, you learn to enjoy the process more. Give yourself grace when you make mistakes too. And a big one is like learning to take like a reasonable amount of time doing things, not needing them to absolutely be perfect. And then just, yeah, like finding just so much more joy. And like, even for business owners, I've learned that you can bring play to like problem solving when you feel really stuck with something. I do this with organizations too. So often when we're stuck in a problem, we're in this really constricted energy, this rigid energy that can actually be really hard to come up with solutions. So a great thing to do is like take a break, take some time to play, or start just like brainstorming solutions that make no sense at all.
Hmm.
That are like, this is so stupid, this is so weird. But it's like when you do that, you shift your energy. And that kind of energy that is lighter and less anxious will actually open you up to new solutions. And so it's really powerful to bring in play in healing perfectionism because that is like all the opposite of perfectionism. And so a big part of my work is like doing inner child work. We do a lot of mindset work as well as like letting go of these beliefs of I'm not good enough or all these things. I'm not safe to play, whatever might be stopping you from playing,
Yeah.
building that relationship with yourself, but then incorporating play. That is, yeah, another big one for perfectionists and why I like to lead live play. is because, and as we all know, we like to control things. We like to have an agenda. We like to like
Mhm.
pre-prepare what we're going to say. And so when you come to one of my play sessions, you actually don't know what we're going to do. So it's like you can't prepare for it. So it's a chance for you to genuinely be curious
Yeah.
and genuinely have some spontaneity in this closed, like safe container. But that people find really healing as well. And so, and it's funny you mentioned that one of the kinds of play of art, you felt like some resistance there, which I'm so appreciative of you sharing that, because so many people do. And like, even with some of my clients, with one-on-one clients, we've done like finger painting before, and like everyone always dreads that. The perfectionists are like, oh my God, this is so messy and gross. They're like, don't want to do this. And it's so funny because it ends up being everyone's favorite thing. And like when you do it, it is so freeing and liberating, just especially if you are someone who puts a lot of pressure on yourself, all these kinds of playful activities. It's just like you can finally breathe a bit of sigh of relief, and like you will feel more connected to your true self. Like thinking about that kid when you're a kid, like you weren't thinking like, oh my gosh, I need to do this choreography as like really small kid, right? You were just like,
Yeah.
if I want to dance, I'm going to dance. Like, I don't care how my
Yeah.
stomach looks. I'm just going to move. Like you were so in the moment. And I think as business owners, when we return to a bit of that, like we're able to bring more of our authentic self to our business as well. But it's not just about our business, it's about our personal life too.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like the playful mindset that you talk about. Because I know you talk about there's like the growth mindset we've all heard of, the fixed mindset we've heard of, and then you sort of have this playful mindset. And it sounds like what you're teaching is really how do we approach all areas of our life every day with a playful mindset, whether it's in the relationship, in solutions, in career, in your business building. So I just love that idea that you get to take it with you. And it's sort of a different way of thinking. I went to Dr. Joe Dispenza's elite, his advanced retreat, a little over a year ago. And I remember I came back and someone had asked me, like, are you still doing the work? Like, are you still doing the meditations? And yes, I was, but also the answer that I had was kind of like, well, I just see the world a different way now. Like I just have a different lens on. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, well, now I took the rose colored lenses off and it's like, I have this playful mindset lens on of how I'm approaching things, which I love that you teach. I feel like it's hard though. I feel like it's definitely a challenge. It's a practice, right? Like it's something that we usually, most of us have to consciously think about.
Yeah, and you're unlearning like a lot of
Yeah.
programming. So one of the main things I teach is compassion, having so much compassion for yourself. Like, yes, it's going to be hard when it's new. Because and also being like, so often we're like, if it does feel hard, we're like, oh, something's wrong with me, or we start judging ourselves. But it's like actually your brain is working. There is nothing wrong with you. Our brain isn't designed to make us abundant. It's just wanting to keep us safe and in the familiar. And I know there's that quote from Joe Dispenza about like the familiar past will soon become the familiar future.
Yeah.
And so it's like your brain is working. There is nothing wrong with you, but we can learn to rewire our brain. It actually plays a great way to rewire our brain as well, because one of the things that really rewires our brain is like vivid imagery, like feeling emotional as well. And like with play, we can really feel. So really to rewire your brain doing it with play is really powerful too. But yeah, I think for me, as a business owner with play, like another big thing is that so often we talk about the all or nothing thinking and how there's like decision making, I think can feel really hard as a business owner. There's just so much pressure to make the right decision. But
Yeah.
it's like there's actually no perfect decision. Like there's no one right way. There's so many possibilities in the world. And like the only way to get clarity is to take action.
Yep.
And so even like that, when I make a decision, I'll say something like, okay, I'm going to invite play into this. I'm going to welcome the playful mindset as I make this decision. And I instantly just feel lighter. Whereas before, business just felt so heavy and like pressure. And yeah, it's just a beautiful way to lighten it.
Yeah. With businesses, especially, I think in general, we have lots of decisions to make, but in business, procrastination is such an issue. I see it all the time, right? We procrastinate to make the decision on the color of our logo, which doesn't matter, and the name of our course, which doesn't matter. And should it be 10 weeks or 12 weeks? And we sit in indecision for so long. And I believe it's like a coping mechanism. So it's a self sabotaging mechanism so that we don't actually have to take action, which is really a story for a different day. Do you have tips? Like, do you have tangible, tactical tips that you can give us on how to get past the overthinking and the decision making? Because we both know the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones who are making the fastest decisions.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I would recommend is I think so many of us live in our head and we don't actually like write down what are the decisions you need to make. And I know I remember in Empower like talking about the brain dump. So it's like brain dumping, what are all the decisions you need to make, actually getting on paper, like that alone helps to release some mental energy. Because it is taking up so much mental energy just living in your head. And then it's like, okay, once you're actually aware of the decisions you need to make, and this can be really small, like this could be like, when do I need to do the laundry as well? Just like whatever is taking up real estate in your head, getting it down on paper.
Yeah.
And then, doing that thing where you're like, okay, I'm going to invite in the playful mindset making these decisions, putting less pressure on ourselves, right? Again, like there is no perfect decision, knowing there's so many possibilities, and whatever path you take, you will figure things out because action breeds clarity. And actually, a really powerful story of this was in 2020. I didn't mention, but when I first started my business or wanted to, this was like strictly an in-person idea. The business idea I had was making a playroom, a physical playroom for adults to come to reconnect with their inner child, reconnect with their five senses. Like I had moved to a place with like two bedrooms. One of those bedrooms is going to be the playroom. I was working with an interior designer.
Wow.
It was like I was only going to be working with people in Toronto. And I was like so attached to this idea, thinking that the pandemic was just going to be over soon. And like clearly it kept going for way longer than we thought. And so I was like so attached to this idea. And then I realized, okay, if I keep waiting for this, who knows how long I'm going to be waiting? Like, let me open up to the playful mindset, new possibilities. And then I came up with this idea of the playbook and the play box. And so I actually created a sensory box that I sent out to my clients so that they could experience kind of what I wanted at the playroom in the comfort of their own home. It was super convenient. And then that actually meant that I got to work with like so many more people from across the world. And now most of my clients aren't even in Canada. So it was just like that alone, that shift in just like letting go of how I thought it had to look and being open to new possibilities. And like, then after that, once I launched my business, I started getting people reaching out to me like couples. Hey, do you do couples play sessions? Do you do organizations like sessions, like things I wasn't even thinking about that only started because I took action? So for me, it was like having that playful mindset, knowing there's so many possibilities, and also knowing that some of the biggest inventions we use today were made by mistake.
Hmm.
So like I thought about you, Jess, because post-it to profit, one of your like signature methods,
Yeah.
post-it notes were made by mistake. So it's like with that, or stainless steel was made by mistake, Play-Doh was made by mistake. So
Wow.
sometimes like beautiful things can actually come from mistakes. And then as for some other things I like to do, I like to think about like my future self as well in terms of making a decision, like asking myself if I were honest with myself, what would I really want to do if there were no barriers? What would that version of myself was everything they want? How would they make this decision?
Yeah.
Like what does my soul nudge say? Or thinking about your inner child, like, you're the little kid in you with the big dreams, like what decision would make them proud? That one's always fun too. And then another big one too is deciding, is the decision that you're making, are you doing it from a place of fear or love? I
Hmm.
think that one's really big too, like noticing, are you making this decision based on you're worried what other people are going to think of you? Are you doing it to impress someone? Is it genuinely what you want? Does it
Yeah.
genuinely light you up? Does it feel right in your body, or do you feel some tension? Usually you can tell in your body how it feels if it is fear or love.
Hmm.
And so that's another good one as well.
I love this. I teach something to our elite clients. So I don't know that you've ever had this training because you never, you weren't a part of the mastermind, but um, it's a visual that I'm getting really strong right now as you're talking about this. And the way that I teach it is when I make a decision, I sit in the boardroom. And I think of like
Mm.
it could be a stuffy boardroom. It's fine. It could be whatever. I picture like something from Suits, like up like high rise glass windows, but there's the big board table. And at the boardroom table, when I'm making a decision, there's me. And then there's my inner child sitting in one of the seats, and my ego is sitting in one of the seats, and my fear is sitting in one of the seats. And I sort of have like all of these different directors that are sitting in the different seats. And as you're talking about it, that's the visual that I'm grasping. And it's kind of like my future self, right? Or my higher self. And then there's my childhood self. And there's all these different versions of me. And if you're making a decision, you have the ability to say, like, okay, everyone, you put your vote in, and you kind of hear what people are saying. And the people are all the different aspects of yourself, right? And it's like It is really
Mm.
interesting when we start to unpack and go, well, I think that's kind of fear driven, or I think that's kind of egoic, like an ego driven thing where it's like a accolades and awards and how does it look as opposed to how does it feel? And something that I'm really
Mm.
getting from a lot of what you're talking about is it's very feeling driven. Even when you had the nudge years ago, you were like, I just feel like I need to do this. I feel like I want to do this. Even though people aren't supporting me, it feels right. And so you do such a beautiful job leaning into the feeling, but I'm curious how you allow yourself to not get clouded because sometimes
Mm.
emotions and feelings can skew our judgment,
Mm.
right? It's kind of like when people are like love makes you blind. It's like that feeling can make you blind. It can totally manipulate what you think is real. And so does that ever happen to you where like the feeling is actually pulling you in a false direction?
Definitely. Yeah, I would say it's like not perfect. I've just shared some instances where it has been really good, but yeah, I think I'm definitely not perfect at that. And yeah, when things are going on in life where you feel like you're not able to totally maybe tune in, but what I remind myself in those moments where even if there is that lack of clarity or I feel really confused despite doing this method, it's like there's no perfect way. Just
Yeah.
take the action. You'll learn from it either way. Like life isn't meant to be perfect. It's this like journey. And, it's like that in itself really helps me, despite it. And there's another fun method I do where you get a yes or no. So it has to be a yes question, but like you write down, you have two pieces of paper, yes or no. You close your eyes and you ask a question, it has to be yes or no. And then as your eyes are closed, like you throw the two papers up, you pick one and you see what it says. And like sometimes you'll feel like, oh, I hope it's a yes or I hope it's a no. And sometimes maybe you don't feel anything. And then it's like, just go with it, take action. Like,
Yeah.
so that's something I'll do as well to just help me like move.
I love that because we usually do have like an intuitive feeling when
We
you pick it
do
up
though,
and it's
usually.
the thing you didn't want. You're like, oh,
I know, I'm like, oh. And
but
then
then
it's
like
like,
that's your
okay, yeah,
decision. Yeah.
totally. So that's
Yeah.
a fun one too.
Yeah. How can business owners that are listening start adding more play, like just into their day to day? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I would say like think about, do you have a morning routine? If so, are you involving play? But also be really careful with your morning routine and perfectionism. I know for me, I used to be really rigid with my morning routine. It was like down to the minute. This is what I have to do. This has to be the order. If I don't do one or
Same.
two things, I've failed for the day. So it's like then I was like, okay, I just made a sheet of like things I could potentially do. And on the day of, I'll do a few of those things. Maybe I'll just do one, and that's okay. Like letting go of the all or the nothing. But I do really think adding some element of play in that would be nice, whether it's just like dancing to a song or singing or drawing or like even waking up. So right when you wake up, your subconscious mind is super impressionable. And I learned this from someone else. I saw it on a Instagram reel. I don't remember her name, but I really liked it.
Yeah.
And she said, as soon as you wake up, even if you didn't have a good sleep, just like throw your hands up and just be like, I slept so great. And like, just like start your day that way. Cause it like rewires your brain to like feel like, okay, like I'm in this positive momentum. Another thing I do is because the first thing I wake up with is like my alarm on my phone. And I know some people, if you don't have your phone in your room, that's a great thing actually, but you can modify what your alarm says. So I'll write something silly that I wake up to see my alarm. So it might be like, congratulations, you're live, or like, let's dance, or just like something like that, that just starts your day in that more playful mindset and feeling.
Yeah.
And then if you're really busy, which I think a lot of us are as entrepreneurs, balancing a lot, even like things like most of us drink tea or coffee during the day or water or just some kind of liquid. It's like when you're going to do that, like just like add a little twirl or like a little prance or just like something to tap into you. And then another big one I'm always mention is like shaking meditation. So I always do this with my clients. It's like shaking off any like energy, anything that's stressing you out. Even before you get on a call with your clients, it's like do a little shake, do a little dance. There's so many ways to add little pockets of play into your day.
These are so good because I feel like some of the stuff that we do in our morning routines or whatever, like you, I was the same way. If it wasn't in the right order, perfect, then it didn't
Yeah.
work. But I feel like those morning routines sometimes can turn into that, where it's like you start out and it's like, okay, I'm journaling. And then it's like, okay, now I'm journaling and meditating. And then I'm journaling, meditating, and doing breath work. And it gets to a place where it's almost ineffective because you're just checking boxes off of a to-do list and you're not really present. So the fact that you're just bringing in like the easiest, like write something funny on your alarm, it's like, oh, it doesn't have to be another task. You're telling me things that I don't have to like add on. It's almost the compound effect. You're already drinking water, so now just add on a little shimmy with your water. It's like, okay, I can do that. So I love how you're approaching it, especially for the recovering perfectionist or the business owner who's flooded with stuff. Because I feel like if you came in and you're like, well, at noon you have to play with Play-Doh, and at 3 o'clock I want you finger painting, and at 5 o'clock every night, you're doing the blindfold Macarena. I'm like, Kara, I can't do that. Like, I cannot. That sounds awful. So I'm loving, loving, loving these ideas. I know you have something really exciting coming up. A
Mm.
2-day totally free journey, right? Called Play to Prosper. Can you tell us about it? Who's it for? Like, how do we hear about it? What is it? Tell me
Yeah,
everything.
so excited. So happening on June 12th and June 13th, 2024, nice and soon, I'm hosting a free 2-day play shop, as you mentioned. So this is for online business owners, coaches, creatives who are looking to move past the anxiety, the perfectionism, the self-doubt, so that they can start really achieving in their business in a healthier, playful way, a way that feels good, a way that's connected with that self-trust and that creativity, so that you can start taking bolder action, right? We can move past the perfectionism, start attracting bigger opportunities, but having fun doing it. So this is going to be a highly interactive event. We will play, like we'll dance, we'll tap into our inner child and community, but then there'll also be like real business coaching, mindset coaching in the experience as well. And I will say, if this feels maybe uncomfortable to play live in community, I would take that sign as resistance as something that you need. You will be shocked at how fun it is. Like, a lot of people come to my events maybe a little bit scared, and it's totally normal. But it's such a safe, loving community. We have so much fun. And also, it's like, as a business owner, you are looking to shift your identity, show up in new ways. And this is a really powerful way to do that, because I think play is such a way to access our creativity and stand out in our business, like by being our truer self. And like, by playing and prioritizing that, you will be accessing more of your creativity so you can show up for yourself and your clients in that like authentic way that feels good for you.
Yeah, I love it. And this is totally free. We'll drop
Totally
the link in
free.
the show notes. Where can people find you on social media? Where do you hang out most?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram at the Playful Warrior. And then you can check my website, theplayfulwarrior.com, for all of my offerings, tons of ways to play there.
I love it. Well, I know I definitely want to come to this workshop. I'm like, I'm so intrigued. This is going to be so much fun. And to play with other people, I'm like, can you play with your screen off?
So it's funny. I always say, like, I talk at the beginning. I encourage people to put their video
Of
on just for
course.
that identity shift. It's like, you're
Yeah,
usually the kind of person who is shy or who doesn't turn their camera on. This is the chance to turn your camera on, start making that shift now.
I love it.
And I will say most people do turn their camera on. So, but of
Yeah.
course, if you can't, that's okay. I would still
Yeah.
welcome, still love to have you there.
No, that's awesome. I love it. Okay, so we'll drop that in the show notes. That's kicking off June 12th and 13th. Play to
Yeah.
Prosper. It's your little virtual play shop that we're going to be doing, which is so fun. You ready for some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I have to ask, what's your favorite game?
Ooh, my favorite game is actually cornhole. Do you know cornhole?
Ooh, yeah, yeah. It's a good
So I love
barbecue.
that. It's so funny because I used to be so competitive with cornhole. Like, if I lost, like the night was done, like it was a terrible time. And I feel like I was such a sore loser, but now it's like I just have so much fun with it. Sometimes my family and I like make up scores, and or we'll just play it regularly, but like it doesn't matter so much about the outcome. But yeah, I like that. I like shooting games, kind of
Yeah,
like yeah, it's always been fun.
yeah. What is your favorite book that has to do with play?
I would definitely say Play by Dr. Stuart Brown. This book honestly really changed my perspective of play, from thinking it was something that was like fluffy, bottom of the to-do list, just for kids, to realizing how impactful it actually is for like our brain health, our memory, our relationships, like
Mm.
our creativity. And it's really fun as well. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend Play. And he is the national founder of the Institute for Play in the world.
Oh, so cool. If
Yeah.
you were to give a TED talk on nothing you're known for, what would it be?
Hmm. I think I would do one on solo travel. I've traveled a lot, like over 45 countries. I've done a lot of solo travel as well. And I think a lot of people have fears of like being alone, especially as a female. So I think I could chat about that.
That is so cool. What was your favorite country?
Colombia.
Wow, quick
Yeah.
answer. No
Yeah, oh yeah,
hesitation.
it's so clear. I went for my second time this year. I worked for a month this year there. But then in 2016, I was there for 4 months.
Wow, good for you. Guilty
Yeah.
pleasure.
Ooh. I would say like The Bachelor, like those reality TV shows.
Love it. Our
Yeah.
$50,000 question. If I were to cut you a check for $50,000 that you had to use in or on the Playful Warrior business, you could split it up or use it in one lump sum. How would you use it?
Okay, so I've been wanting to get a speaking agent. So I think I would hire like a speaking bureau to help with that. Also, maybe play around with ads, like get a social media manager for ads specifically.
Cool. I love it. And then our final question. So we named the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe we're always evolving and growing, and our businesses grow and evolve to the extent that we do. What is your next personal or business evolution?
Hmm. Yeah, so I've been thinking about a few things in business. One of them is actually creating a certification program for people who want to be a play coach.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah, I actually get asked that more than you would think, at least more than I would think.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that for people who want to include play in their business. So that's something I'm thinking about. And then another really random thing that's kind of my heart, but to do with inner child healing would be like a manifesting love program at some point. I think that would be really fun. And
Yeah.
I met my partner in the last year, and I think like I just have a lot of fun stories to share, but no time soon, but something fun I'd love to do one day.
Awesome. I love it. Kara, I'm so grateful for you. Thanks for coming on the show. It's
Yeah.
so fun
Thank you so
to
much for
play
having
and
me.
chat. Yeah, of course. And
It was so nice.
like I said earlier, I'm seriously, I'm blown away by everything that you're doing. I mean, when you came into Empower, it's always obvious. You could tell when people are like, "Oh, okay, she's got it." But to see what you've built, especially off of something that felt very different, it was very unique, right? Especially when we were mostly, I mean, 2022, still dealing with mostly like health and fitness professionals, nutritionists and trainers. And then here's Kara, a play coach. I'm like, what is a play coach? Just to
Yeah.
see what you've done and how you weave science into it. I think that's my favorite part because you really have stuff to back it up. So thank you. I adore you. If you've loved this episode, which I'm sure you have, take a screenshot, share it on social media, tag Kara at The Playful Warrior, tag me at I am Jessica DeRose, and let us know what play you're going to introduce into your day today. So tell us what you're going to do to play today. As soon as we get off this podcast, I got my water bottle right here. You better believe I'm getting up and shaking my booty when I take a sip of this water. That is what I'm going to do today. Kara, what are you going to do?
I'm actually going to do a little playful, spontaneous walk.
Oh,
I'm meeting a friend, but I'm just going to go with like no Google Maps and just like be curious and just explore around. So that's what I'm going to do.
I love it. I love it so much. Thank you so much for coming on. As always, friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.